Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay,
Kavod Harav, we're left on Katav Rambam.
yeah, there it is. So it says, Rambam says the Rambam here, Perek Bad Minchot Brachot, laws of brachot, laws of blessings. Kli shenishbar shvira ham taharato midei tumah. Right. So we already read this in the tour. This Rambam. Now the Beit Yosef wants to explain it. So he says, Mashma de'afilu b'machazik revi'it implies that even if it holds a revi'it of water, this utensil, mean shever or mata, below the broken part. It's talking regarding that. We're talking about that. Ve'im loken, shem loken. If it's not so, my area. Then why, right? Why is it significant nishbara? Then why did you have to say that it was broken? Afilu nishbara, even if it wasn't broken. I mean, also, umash manami de'afilu litol mimenu derech hanekeb. So it implies that even to wash right from that cup by way of the hole, lo mehane, doesn't really work. That then the mikom makom shever kli, why? Because it's broken. The chol she'en shem kli alav. So if it doesn't have a name of a kli, of a vessel, and not notlim imenu liadayim, so we cannot really wash the hands with that. Lefi zeh kli cheres. So this is according to this, right? A clay vessel, shenikab bekones bashke, has a big hole that it can bring in water. Kivan shehu metaher metumato. Once it becomes purified from its impurity, bechach, by way of the breakage, right? Like we didn't learn the Mishnah, but perkim of the kelim, first third perk of kelim. Shiur keli cheres letaher asu leochalin. So it says there that the size of a clay vessel to become pure, which is made for food, shuro beochalin mashkin, shuro b'mashkin. So there's a size for food if it's made for food. There's a size for if it's made for liquids. Besok perka amatzniya. The end of this parak is a Shabbat Tzadik Yamud Bet. I mean on the shiura the mashkin haino bekones mashke. That's only right if it's used for liquids. In other words, if it's used for liquids, then we measure it, the whole as a liquid thing, right? In the context of a liquid, right? Imken pasulhu litol. So therefore, he says it's disqualified to wash your hands mimenu afilu derech hanekeb, by way of the hole, because the hole is too big. Okay, that samag, like the samag. So that's the opposite of what Rabbeinu said, right? Which is the Torah. That any vessel which has a hole, to bring in liquids there, even if it was disqualified from washing from the top, from the rim, but you can wash by way of the hole. So as if so, there is a wonderment here. How did Rabbeinu write, right? The same din, stam, right? Plainly. Kan, and then he wrote over here, Divrei Rambam, the words of Rambam, Stam, also plainly. So that implies that these two laws don't really contradict each other, because he didn't say anything, to qualify or whatever. ומצאתי לבעל התרומת דשן, so I brought him תרומת דשן, שנסתפק בדברי הרמב"ם. He wasn't sure how to learn the words of the Rambam, how to get the proper understanding. אם הם דווקא בניקב בכונס משקה, does it really mean that the Rambam that precisely that it has a hole which bring in liquids, the shulav on the bottom, sheno machazik revi'it lemata, therefore it cannot hold revi'it at all, right, on the bottom, because it's going to drain out in the nectar from the hole, from below the hole. But if it does hold revi'it from below the hole, kasher, it's kosher. Or do we say that even that, in that manner, it's also disqualified? So, in other words, the words of the Rambam are not so clear, to understand what the parameters are here, So people have some problems with the Rambam here to understand exactly, it's a little bit vague, basically, right? Okay, so so it says Bet Yosef, right, that which the Trumat Hadashin had a doubt, but the two had no doubt. That according to Rambam, it's not really disqualified if it brings in liquids, unless it doesn't hold the revi'it min hanekev umata, below the hole. But if it holds revi'it hanekev umata, right, from the hole and below, kasher, it's kosher. Mishum ha'achi katav, and because of that, right, he wrote kli shenishbar v'lo katav kli shenikav. That's what he said. It's a kli, that vessel that got broken, and not the vessel that has a hole. So since it doesn't hold revi'it below the hole, it's considered like it's broken altogether, because there's no way to use that anymore. So therefore it becomes purified, because it's not a vessel anymore. By way of this, that's the way I found also. He says Rashba in the Rashba, it says in Torah Tabayit, this language, kli shenikav nekev gadol. So it says that a vessel that has a hole, right, a large hole, achehu machnis mashkin, that it can bring in liquids into there. Kishadam moshivo alamayim, when a person places on the water, how does it pasul? It's disqualified. When that said, that's the one we're talking about, where the hole is on the bottom of the utensil. So this way, there's no way that it can hold a revi'it. But if there is enough place there to accept a revi'it below the hole, kasher, says Rashba, it's kosher. When was that said? It's talking about a vessel where this breakage doesn't purify it from its impurity. But if you have a vessel which got a hole, or nishbar, or broke, right? Shever amale oto mideh tumato. It broke enough of a breakage, to purify it from its impurity. Pasul, then it's going to be disqualified. Lefish en zekli, it's not anymore a vessel, right? Not called a vessel anymore. Ela shever kli. So what is it called? A broken vessel. Oh. Okay. There you go. That's the end of the Rashba there. The mashke chatla kli haole mitumato. So it says, it seems like you're going to find this where the utensil, right, loses its impurity. If it's less than the amount, the size it takes to bring in liquids inside. Gistra. This is, for instance, if it's a gistra, right? So we'll see what this is, right? This gistra. Like we said in Shabbat, Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph, that gistra, right? Even if it's a small hole that it just lets out liquids but doesn't bring in, it's still going to be purified. וכן כתב הרמב"ם, פרק י' מלכות שקלים. That's the Rambam also says that. מדברי הרמב"ם שם נראה, so it seems from the words of the Rambam there, שהוא סובר כדת הרשב"א, that he holds like the Rashba, the מסתם כלים, דאמינן, when it comes to regular, vessels, that we say, the נקב וכונס משקה, that it has a hole to bring in wet liquids, מעלה אותו מטומאתן, it purifies from its impurity, דווקא כשאין מחזיקין רביעית מן הנקב, that's only if it doesn't hold רביעית from below the hole, ולמטה, אבל אם הם מחזיקין רביעית, but if it does hold רביעית, עדיין שם כלי עליהם, it's still called a vessel. שאפילו שבר כלי, because even a broken vessel, אם הוא מחזיק רביעית, if it can hold a רביעית, כתב שהוא מטמא, that it does become impure, like any vessel. וכדמשמע בפרק ב' ופרק ג', like it's implied in these chapters 2 and 3. the כלים, אף על פי כלים, מסכת כלים, אף על פי שכתב בהלכות ברכות, even though it writes in laws of blessings, שאין נוטלים בדפנות הכלים, that we don't take the walls of the vessels, ולא בשולי המחץ, and also not the bottom, ולא בחרסית, ולא במגופת החבית. So he's bringing here all kinds of vessels, right? That whether it's clay, whether it's the lid of a barrel. לאו משום שבר כלי פסול הוא, פסל לו. It's not, they're not disqualified because they're broken vessel, אלא בפני שאינם מקבלים רביעית. The problem is they can't hold a רביעית. שלא מסומכין, right, so in other words, if you don't lean them on something, they cannot hold a רביעית. דומיה דמגופת החבית, just like the lid of the barrel, the nakat biadayu, that ואף על פי שכתב, even though he wrote ואם תיקן המגופה הנטילה, that if he fixed this lid in a way that it can stand by itself for washing hands, notrim, and then we can wash from it, for the hands. hu adin de mehane tikun leinach. So it says the same thing will happen also with these other vessels, that if you fix it up like that and it now can stand by itself, so then it will do the job. Okay, good. Okay, so we're almost done with this. Let's see if we got a few more minutes here. So it goes on here in the Beit Yosef. It seems like you're going to find, right, a vessel that gets purified when it has a hole like less than bringing in right. We read this already. I'm sorry, we read this already. Let's go back. 1 second. Yeah, so it goes like this. So he says this language that Rabbi used in the language, the Gemara, that we're talking, that he used the lid of the barrel. He said that if we fix it, we can wash the hands. He's talking about one of the vessels, but there's also other vessels you can do that with. The Huwa Din Leinach says, as I said, so also could be that he used the example of the lid, because it teaches you something more. Even though that it's its receptacle is not made for receiving liquids, for holding liquids. Still you can still fix it up and use it. All the more so, he says, when you're talking about the walls of the vessels and things like that. That's what it says in this Perek Kuf Zayin, which is also in Chulin, like we said yesterday. Same thing, same place. Gabe megufat chavit, right? Regarding the lid of the barrel. שתקנה פסולה דתפנות כלים. So it's as we said, right, that if you fix it, it's still disqualified. Why? The דתפנות הכלים מפני שאין יושבים על המסומכים הוא. So because the walls of the utensils, vessels, the reason is because they can't stand without having something to lean on, support. So implies that if they were holding רביעית, שלא מסומכים כשרים, without having to lean on something, then it will be kosher. That's what the Rosh says, Peresh Yadayim, right? In Perek Aleph, Mishnah Bet, over there, in the Masechet Yadayim, Tefanot kelim b'shulei machatz, that if you have the walls of the vessels, right, or the bottom, Shivir kelim, they're considered like broken vessels. Tzarich lomar, dehainu lomar, you have to say that, it means to say that she'ena mekablim revit, they cannot hold a revit, aval im mekablim revit, but if they can hold a revit, afa pi shivre kelim hen, even though they're broken vessels, notlim hen yadayim, we can still wash hands with them. V'chen dat Rabbeinu Shimshon, that's why Rabbeinu Shimshon says also, shkata b'perek kama, the Masechet Yadayim, he writes in the first perek of Yadayim, the Ita ben Tosefta, it's written in Tosefta, right? Perek Aleph, Achemet ve'achfisa, afa pishe ve'chotin notlin men yadayim. So, right, as we said yesterday, the skin bottles can be used, to wash hands, even though they're small. He explains there, but they have to hold the revit, right? That's the smallest it could be. Smaller than that's no good. So again, right, revit is 3 ounces. Don't forget, huh? Don't forget. Okay. So the Tosefta shkatav od sham. So it says the Tosefta that he wrote over there. Katane shule kli etz. It's talking about the bottom of the base of the wooden vessel. Ukli etzem or a bone vessel. Ukli zchochit or glass. And not clean, man. We don't wash with that. The adayim the hands. Kin kasan shafan ve'asan kelim. Not to man, but it says if you made them into a vessel by changing its structure, then we can use it. Im yesh lehem kabbalat revit, if they can hold revit, tzarich lomar tepsula. So you have to say that the disqualification of these also, because they cannot really stand without being supported. So when we said, right, that he fixed the structure, what does that mean? He made a base for it so it can stand. So this way they can stand without being supported by something. And And that which teaches, right, that he made them into vessels, perusho, what does that mean? Right? By way of that, he made it into a vessel. By what? To giving it a base that can hold it up. Okay, that's the story there. Long story. Okay. So this was long one. Vav. So now we do Shulchan Aruch Vav. Let's see that. Okay. So yeah, we're going through now this whole thing, right? Which we started yesterday. So it says like this, right? Lo iten maim lechavero bechofnav. You're not allowed to give water to your friend, right? In your palms, putting your hands together and making it into like a receptacle. He can't wash his hands, from something like that, making your hand into a receptacle. That's not going to work. Why is that? Because your hand is not a vessel, right? Like we said yesterday. The rabbis required a vessel. Okay. So then he goes on. So he says also the same thing would apply if he washed one hand from a vessel, then he spilled from there to his other hand. Doesn't work that, right? Right. So then he says, but Rabbeinu Tam says this is kosher. Why? Because the beginning came from a kli, came from a vessel. So we don't pass like Rabbeinu Tam, right? He's a right single opinion here, right? Minority. So we don't go like that. So he said that's only if that hand, right, the first hand was pure. How would it become pure, right? If you remember, we talked about this already, right? What you got to do to make sure your hands stay pure when you're washing, right? So he says, he spilled like, one revi'it, right, in one shot on the hand. So once he does that, now his hand is clean. So he can do this kind of trick now, if that's the case. So that first spill that you do, right, according to this opinion, right, Rabbi Tam, has to be a revi'it, Therefore, it's gonna purify your hand, and then you can spill it onto the other hand, right? Pure water, right? Otherwise, it won't be pure water; it'll be right impure water, and it's gonna, so it's not gonna purify your hand. Okay. Okay, so what's it? Says the Ramah here, so says the Ramah, right? That the custom, by the Ashkenazim, is that they rely on Rabbeinu Tam, which is like a leniency, right? Because according to the first opinion here, right, this kind of washing doesn't work. So there you go. But it says, says the Rama, the first opinion is really, the good one. So in other words, he's telling you the custom is to be lenient, but according to the, right, according to the logic, you should be really stringent here. So therefore you should be stringent, he says. Okay. That's interesting, right? So it's telling you the custom is to be lenient, but you should be stringent, right? Don't you dare. Don't be lenient. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, very good. The truth is, we don't really need these things nowadays. Because we have running water in the house. So we got plenty of water. So we don't really need to pull these tricks. We got plenty of water. Just open the tap, right? It's coming out. So you don't have to cheap it out. You don't have to cheap out on this mitzvah. Do it the right way. Baruch Hashem. Hashem gave us plenty of water. So we're in good shape. I'm gonna tell you. Okay, beautiful. Let's go to the next one, which is Zion. This is an important one. So we got to get into it. Okay, so it says here, let's read the tour first. Tzarich she'yavo amayim mikoch adam. That's the tour. Tzarich she'yavo amayim mikoch adam. So what does this mean? The water has to come, right, from the strength of a man. So what does that mean? Right, it could be a woman also. It's all, we're not trying to say, right, that the women are disqualified. Right? We're talking about humans, right? So it could be, human. So the thing is that has to come. He has to spill it, the water. He has to pour it out. So a human has to pour the water. So he says, not like the ones who said, right, that you're allowed to just, immerse your hand into a vessel without pouring it out. Because Rapapa said in the Gemara, Hi Arita the Delae enotlin mimena yadayim. So he says we're not allowed to use dip our hands into some kind of vessel, like a barrel. Not a barrel, I'm sorry, a bucket, right? So he says, right, that we're talking about like a pipe or something, which draws out the water from the river, the shofchino bo, and and we spill with that. We pour it out with that. והוא נמשך ממנו להשקות השדה. So it comes out from there, right, to water the field. אין אדם יכול לתת ידיו לתוכו. So a person is not allowed to put his hands in there, So some kind of like a little pipe duct kind of thing, And כדי שיקלחו המים עליהם. You cannot put your hand in there, so the water should to flow through them, right? Flow by them. Mishum de lo atem mikoch gabra. Why? It doesn't come from the strength of a man. Oh, right. So what does that mean? It's coming, out of the river, right? So there's no strength of a man there. There's no